I never looked at any of the competitive products at all. And what that really led to is this culture, again, of being customer first. That led us a really long way. I remember a story fairly early on at Marketo when we were getting into the annual evaluation cycle from Gartner for our category. And that was, even more important then than it is today. And we did our whole, half day long or 3/4 of the day long dog and pony show with the senior Gartner people. Kim Collins from Gartner was leading the practice at that time. And when we were done presenting for a half day, she said to me something that I've never forgotten, which is that she said, "Phil, your colleagues from Eloqua were in here yesterday doing the exact same presentation, and they were in ready to launch their new Eloqua 10 product. And they came in and told us about how Eloqua 10 was going to be the Marketo killer. And they showed me the features in the product that were going to be the Marketo killer features." What she said is, "You came in and you and your team never mentioned Eloqua today. You never mentioned a single competitor. You told us over and over and over again about how you were making customers successful, what problems you were solving, what they were saying, how you were learning from your customers. And you did that for an entire half day or 3/4 of a day. And all Eloqua did is told us how they were going to kill Marketo with the new product. Eloqua talked to us about Marketo all day yesterday. You talked to us all day about your customers." And she just saw that as the most bright line differentiator between two ways to behave as a vendor. And that whole idea of talk about the customers, not talk about the competitor. And that was part of our sales organization and that Bill Binch built at Marketo, which was that, the sales mantra was never get into a mix it up. If the customer asks you, "Well, why are you better than Eloqua?" The answer is, "Let me tell you why we're better for you and another customer you can reference that'll tell you why it's us. Go ask them about why we're better than Eloqua. Don't ask me." And that would be what our salespeople learned to say was, "Let me give you a customer that can tell you about that. Meanwhile, let me talk about you." And that just absolutely repeated sense of don't look at the competition, don't talk about the competition, just focus on the customer. Now, I'm fiercely competitive. We can talk about that later. So none of this is like a lack of being monstrously competitive, but it is a way to be competitive that focuses on the customer.
Wow.
It works.
Where did you learn that somewhere earlier before Marketo? Is that just something you have lived by forever? Because that is pretty unique. Honestly, this is the first time I've heard that in all the interviews I've done with all the different CEOs. And I love it. And I remember you and I having a conversation at one point when we were looking at using a different platform, and it was exactly the conversation you described. And you were very competitive and very insistent that we stay with Marketo, and we did. But my question is, where does this come from?
I don't know for sure, but it sort of, in some sense, gets back to the very, very start of my career. I was just, as I said, history student and not quite sure what I was going to do for a career. But, I had done some computer programming back in the 1970s and was actually a secret assembly language programmer and stuff. So I actually had some pretty good skill. But through just a set of things, it's way too long of a story to tell. I managed to trip into 1981, I got hired by a venture-backed company, Kleiner Perkins and Menlo Ventures on Sand Hill, way back in the 1981, had founded this company in Sunnyvale, California. And I got hired to literally drive down to where a printer facility was and pick up printouts and drop them off and then go back to college and finish up my history degree. But somewhere along the line, an engineering director there met me and figured me out and realized kind of what I was, and took me under his wing and eventually hired me and gave me my first job as a professional engineer and engineering manager. And this guy had a great Silicon Valley career, retired now, and just gave me the best foundation as an engineering leader and an engineering director and whatever. But the very best thing he did was about 6 months in or 8 months in, he introduced me to the company's number one sales rep, Balasubramanian Sashikant, who was based in Hartford, Connecticut, and served the big insurance companies and banks in the Northeast. And so he sent me out to go sell with Sashi. And I was 21. I was just brand new, but somehow spotted that I had this interest in talking to customers and listening to customers and what kind of, I was with the sales rep, and he realized that I could go sit in a meeting with customers and hear things that they were saying beyond what they were saying, kind of have this sense that, what did they mean? And that's some sixth sense I don't know, spotted it in me. I don't know where it came from, but what I could do is I could go on one of those things and come back and like know the next year's product plan because the customer just would tell it to me, in as much chapter and verse. And I also learned the art and the craft of sales in that I could never have carried a bag for a long term. I have carried big numbers. I've done sales and I know it enough to be dangerous, but I couldn't have been that as a career. But the ability right on day one in the first 6 months of my career to be sitting in front of the world's largest insurance company, telling them why they needed to buy my product, but really listening to them. And at the same time, learning to be a great product guy just came together for the rest of my career. And that notion of everything you need to know about building a product, customers are just going to tell you if you listen, and if you know how to listen both to what they say explicitly and listen to what they're saying, behind the scenes. And it just, I don't know, it just became this kind of snowball thing where from each job to each job, it became the piece of magic that worked for me to kind of push the career and my product successes forward.
And basically, you go listen to the customer. To your point, the customer tells you what to build. You build what that customer tells you, what the customers tell you to build. And then when you go sell it, you tell them we built what you and your peers all need. I don't care what everyone else has, basically.
Yeah. And then keep listening, lather, rinse, repeat, right? That's not a one-time thing. That's a continuous process you have to keep doing. But that notion of always listening and always listening to what they do say and what they don't say and what they sort of are saying, but they're not really saying, those are all things. So it's really, it is a very high empathy, very high, kind of EQ process, but it's where, everything comes from there.